rapping to the beat. And me, the groove, and my friends, we're gonna try to move your feet. See, I am one to market. I like to say hello to the black, the white, the red, and the brown, the purple and yellow. But first, I gotta bang bang, a boogie to the boogie, say up jump the boogie to the bang bang boogie. Let's rock. You don't stop, rock the rhythm that'll make your body rock. And so we got Jon here to talk about his book. What's up, Jon?
Man, that is awesome.
Uh,
Dude, I'll tell you, that is incredible.
Thank
Every single one of your shows I've seen, I think the song gets better. That was fantastic.
Oh, man, thank you so much. Guys, welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh, trying to be the host with the most, and we have a very special guest here today. Author, entrepreneur, and businessman, Jon, is it Bostock or Bostock?
Bostock, right.
Bostock, boom! I got a fucked up last name, so I'm pretty good with other people's last names. Guys, the format of the show is simple. We're bringing together change makers who are living their passions to create greatness in the world. And Jon is neither short of greatness nor passion. So we're going to dive right into that. And he's got a new book that we're going to be talking about. A couple of things, though, about live streaming. We are live. Start a watch party. Ask us questions. I have my team on standby. They'll be able to shoot questions over our way. But before we go there, what I'd like to do is I really want to tell you about our guest. I'm so lucky to have him here today. We actually share the same publisher. So I reached out to the publisher. I'm like, hey, I want to interview people that wrote badass books. And they said, oh, you got to talk to Jon. So a little bit about Jon. He's an entrepreneur, CEO, and he's the author of his new book, The Elephant's Dilemma. And it was just released on August 4th. So congratulations, man.
Thank you. And by the way, I didn't realize we have so much in common. I actually told the publisher that I would only be interviewed by people who could be a badass interviewer with a song up front, and they found you. This is incredible.
Who knew?
Who knew? This is serendipity, man.
It just, sometimes the stars align and we just don't know it until it happens. So, man, dude, August 4th, the baby was born.
Incredible. And I'll tell you, I know you've been through the process with your book, and we talked a little bit before the show about just how hard that is. I started the book before the concept of COVID was real, right? And my book was all about taking a look at yourself and thinking about what you do and how your actions impact those around you. Now, look, to your point, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business guy. And my lens typically is in corporate America and how to break free from how we're tethered to our desk. But look, this reality that we're living in today, there has never been a better time to look around and ask if we can do more.
So let me ask you, and I'm so with you. Like right now, we are in these unprecedented times. There's a lot of fear. People are, if you look at like Maslow, we're in the survival part of the pyramid. People are uncomfortable, right? They're
Totally.
like, dude, last weekend, people $600 ran out, and then they did the emergency thing to get them $400. That's fucked up, right? Like
real.
we have
very real
unemployment. This is a really, it's a pandemic, and it's something that hasn't happened in this country for 100 years. Hopefully it won't happen again, but probably will for all we know. So with that said, here you were. When did you get, what is the book about? Let's tell us a little bit about it. I love the name, The Elephant's Dilemma, and this idea of an elephant being tethered by a rope, of being this ferociously enormous elephant that can rip out, but chooses not to.
Yeah,
tell me about the idea on the book. Where did it come from? What was it born out of?
Look, the bottom line is, you think about an elephant in the circus, they're a strong beast and they're trained to be tethered. And I look back at my own career and I felt there were times, and I worked for a big company. I worked for one of the biggest companies in the world. Every single year I questioned what I was doing to make an impact. And look, on paper, my career was great and I made good money and the things around me seemed to be going okay. But I always felt that drive to do more. And frankly, I didn't have the confidence to take a leap. And so it hit me as I was sitting at my grandmother's funeral and I was looking around the room. And this is a woman who went through extraordinary hardship in her life. She left Belarus and went through Russia and went through Japan and found her way to the United States during a very difficult time in this world, leaving everything behind, taking extraordinary risk and taking a huge leap because she had to. And it really made me think, our ancestors have taken these significant, huge leaps. And here we are in these big corporate jobs, afraid to even take a step forward, afraid to do what we think will make a big impact on the world. And so really it took me a while before I was able to take steps. And then I looked back at my time in corporate America, and then those leaps that I started to take. And I thought, more people need to appreciate and understand that we all can make a difference.
So when you look at, and I love that idea, that because I think, like, I mean, I always tell people, as much as I don't always eat my own dog food, like, I believe in a life without constraints, right? Like,
Right.
like if another human can do something, I can do something within reason, right? I'm not going to go, dunk on, some, NBA basketball player, but, from like, if I'm starting a business or, even writing a book, right? Like we are the only people that get in our own way for 99% of the things that are out there. And so when you think, and I love that idea of this immigrant story. And I come from a family of immigrants that, there's a lot of fucking hardship to like get to the United States and to build a life. And yet there's people that are afraid to go like tell their boss an idea. And I'm like, dude, you know what it took for you to even be in a position to even have a job like this? Like, do you know what hard, like, did my grandfather he's an Italian immigrant. He scrubbed floors, dude.
That's right.
Like, he scrubbed floors, and he like he was a what do you call it, a renegade against Mussolini, fighting, like literally like a rebel, like just to get to the United States, he was doing shit like that, right? So like, I'm standing on the shoulder of giants just so that I could even be in a position to sit here and be in my cozy house talking on the screen.
Yeah, and look, and they did this for future generations. Right? They did this so that you could have a platform. They did this so that you could make an impact in a different way. And here we are stuck in our bubble, right? I mean, think about during COVID right now. We live in these neighborhoods and we look around. I see these tweets and these Facebook posts where we say, my neighborhood looks fine. My little bubble is fine. Why should I be worried about what's happening around us? So our ancestors really set the great tone and a great pace for us to actually think outside of our bubbles, think about future generations. And we could sit here and start going through all the things that we could do to solve problems for future generations. We should not simply be looking internally at ourselves. And so we should really use that as inspiration and find something that we believe in for the greater good and go after it.
So let me ask you a question, because it's funny. I had a guest. He's this guy, Don Depani. He was on yesterday. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's this like really, he's a Hindi monk. And he asked me a question. He said, if you had grandchildren, would you love them? And I said, yes. He said, if your children had, or if your grandchildren had grandchildren, they would be your great grandchildren. Would you love them? And I said, yeah, of course. I can't wait to have grandchildren. And great grandchildren would be even better if I could make it that far. He said, what about when they have children? They'll just be your great great grandchildren. Would you think you would love them? And I said, of course. He said, yet the things we're doing in this world today are not showing love to those future generations. So when you wrote the book, what is who's it for? What is it? Give us some like big picture ideas of who's this book for and what is it going to teach them?
Yeah, look, I think it's all about taking little steps, right? And it's about talking about my own career in this large abstract concept of doing things for a better planet and a better world, right? And a better community that we live in. But the bottom line is what I talk about is the need to take little steps. The reality is you and I can talk all day long about macro issues. But if we can't inspire someone to take a little step to break out of that cycle where you really, look, there are more people who feel like they're not contributing than contributing. And if we can get you to take one step towards doing something that you believe in, you're going to have more confidence to then take another step and another step. So, just a basic example, right? My latest company solves a pretty significant supply chain issue. Now, I couldn't have done that when I left the big company, right? So we acknowledge that, and I think globally, we acknowledge that we can't just become the Elon Musk overnight. We have to take little steps to get there. And so really the book is a battle cry to admit that we can do more, admit that we should be a part of a global community, and start taking baby steps to do it, and realize that you have permission, right? No one's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm the innovation police, you're not being innovative enough. Or I'm the inclusive police, you're not being inclusive. These are things that we have to really think about and build out ourselves, because the bottom line is if our neighbors aren't doing well, if our kids aren't doing well, if people 500, 1,000 miles away aren't doing well, that eventually is going to impact us.
It's so, yeah. So when you got the motivation to write the book, you thought of like your grandmother, and then you look at what you're doing right now. It sounds like you're in like a clean tech. Is there? I don't know exactly the business you're in, but Truman's, that's your business.
Yeah, right. That's right.
What is the current business doing?
Yeah. So look, I mean, and not to get too deep into that, but we're solving a supply chain issue. When you look at right now with cleaning products, the biggest issue that the globe faces is the inability to move products from point A to point B. There's a massive supply chain issue. And when you look at cleaning products like Windex as an example, it's 98% water. And you can't officially move that through the supply chain. Not only is it not efficient, it wastes materials, it's really expensive. So we take the water out upstream and we sell concentrates and allow the end use consumer to use their own water and fill the product. And so it's one example of many, right? My company is one example of a lot of different innovations that solve a macro challenge and contribute in some way. But the bottom line is it's all about sustainability, and not in the traditional green sense, but in the sense that if we are going to work together and if we're going to have businesses that can operate over the long term, they have to work through ups and downs, whether we're in another COVID period or whether we're in a stable period. Business has to work, the economy has to function, and we need more people to start thinking about the realities of that.
So in your book, it's these baby steps to creating large change. To your point, Elon Musk didn't become, the owner of Tesla and SpaceX and all this stuff overnight. If you actually do the background, it's like, did he own like some crappy internet company that he sold during the dot-com boom, and then parlayed that into another one, and then parlayed that, it was X.com, which then became PayPal, right? So he had a couple businesses where his first money he made was he made like 10 or 15 million bucks. And this guy just went all in every time, and he's a freaking savant, right? But to your point, and look, like that's not reasonable for most people to do that. But to your point, like we can all make a difference. You don't need to like change the world the way he did, but you could change the world in your own way. Is that kind of the premise of?
And look, what I think is fascinating about Elon Musk, and it's something that you just said, you can do anything. Right? We live in a world sometimes where we say, well, it's impossible to go to the sun. It's impossible. How do you know? Right? I mean, if we just stop at these ideas and these belief systems that something is impossible or we can't do it, then we're never going to innovate. And so what I do appreciate about him is that from a guiding light perspective, from a North Star perspective, he has this idea that anything is possible. And I think that there is merit to that. And I think that, it's something that we can learn from. And look, he is not what I'm telling people to be like in the book, because to your point, there's one Elon Musk, there's one Jeff Bezos. These are kind of larger than life people, but you could point to people in communities. I mean, arguably what you're doing is incredibly impactful. And here we are one-to-one broadcasting this live, right? I mean, you can make an impact and help people think about things in a different way, any way you choose, but you actually have to do it.
Yeah, it's a great point, which is it took me 18 months to do this show, and I was in my own way. And then I was like, dude, I want to meet interesting people and get their stories recorded and out there, because that feeds my soul. When I hear your story, I'm like, motivates me, man, makes me want to go, do more than I'm already doing. And so I can assume that that's really the intention of the book is, hey, look, like we could all do more. So when you think of who the target audience is, if there's listeners out there, it's like, who's the target audience? Is it anybody that wants to make a difference? Is it like a CEO? Is it an entrepreneur? Is it like a leader, an executive? Who's the target audience for the elephant's dilemma?
Yeah, look, what I know is business and the business world. And so my lens is clearly that. And so I think someone who would find it most recognizable is someone in business. When I talk about being tethered, I'm really talking about being tethered to a corporation. And so for the most part, you kind of have to be in that world to get it. Although I'll admit, I've had artists read it and say it really gave them a different perspective on the world. My 9-year-old's teacher read it and said, it made her think completely in a different way about her career and the way she thinks about it. So look, I'll admit, when I wrote it, I was thinking about innovation in terms of the corporate sense. and getting people to break free and really be more innovative around sustainable actions. But from the release, it kind of has resonated with more people than I would have expected, and that's an amazing thing. And I think we're just in a very interesting time in our world where I think people are looking at themselves and saying, how can I do more? And while this is not a book that's giving you a step-by-step, do this first and do that next, I think it is a battle cry about one individual talking about not only my family's history, but what I've done, the confidence of that. I think it speaks to people in a diverse way, for sure.
And so it sounds like obviously there's a broad appeal, but the way you thought of it when it was written was this is a good way to motivate business leaders and business folks to get out of their own way, untether themselves from whatever the artificial rules of engagement are, and go and try to make a difference, whether it's within their company, outside of their company, but to have the courage to do that. And now is the book is that right? Am I kind of assessing that?
Yeah, no. And just look, here's the reality, the way I look at the world. Take gun violence as an example. I really believe if someone solves it economically, we have a faster path to ending gun violence in the world. And so what I mean by that, if there's someone who is sitting at one of the gun manufacturers and says, I've got an idea for a technology that would actually help with violence in schools, that would actually help in violence in public places. I have an idea, but I don't have the confidence to break free. And that idea could be monetized. That idea could actually be something that really helps with gun violence, right? And so a lot of times when you look at innovation, whether it's Elon Musk and electric cars or Jeff Bezos with accessibility to books, when you look at different social things that we need, a lot of it is driven through the commercial world. A lot of it is driven by the ability to make a buck, unfortunately. And so what it's trying to do is to say, look, if you're in corporate America, do not think that profit equals doing bad. Profit can equal doing good, and you can actually think about innovation to solve broader issues. And to me, that's what sustainability is. Sustainability is not, I started a company that doesn't use plastic. That is not sustainability. Sustainability is looking at macro principles and solving them and using true innovation to do it.
Yeah, and I don't know how familiar you are with conscious capitalism, but that whole idea is like doing great by doing good, right? So,
absolutely.
So, you made me think of my book, which is The Core Value Equation. And I was just doing a podcast, and I said, look, I think that people have this misinterpretation, and you're kind of touching on it right now, which is that, well, at what expense are we going to go do that? Who's going to pay? I love that one. Who's going to pay for that, Darius? And I'm like, shit, man, like it's going to pay for itself and then some. How about that? And to your point, and I've been saying this, I said, I think this is a really easy way to fix the government. And some people, when I say this, they go, that's communism. I'm like, look, you're thinking about this way wrong. I say, dude, if the United States of America has this, we create such a fertile ground for innovation. If I'm the government, I'm going to be the biggest VC private equity fund in the world. I'm going to take a piece of the action and I'm going to invest in innovation. And instead of the next Amazon that comes out that they're moving their corporation to Ireland, I'm going to be like, dude, I own 20% of Amazon. I don't give a shit where they go, right? So I'm like, the government should be a profit center because they're printing money from creating an environment that, to your point, gets people to want to be innovative, right? Because when there's a financial incentive to do good, people are a hell of a lot more motivated than if it's like, well, it's going to cost us money, it's going to be a pain in the ass, and we got to change something that's already here. People are like, oh, where don't I sign up for that? Because, oh, well, hold on. Before we get there, I got to lobby a bunch of people to fight at Congress and Senate to go do some jobs that they aren't good at doing anyway, right? Right. So I agree with you. In my book, I say it, I go, core values. When I say it, everyone's eyes kind of glaze over depending on how enlightened they are as a leader. And they think I'm talking about culture. And I'm like, dude, you're out of your fucking mind. It's all about making more money, being more productive. And a byproduct is you get a great culture for free.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Because people get motivated by capitalism. That's the reality, right? And that's how I got into it. And so it's really cool to hear you say that, because what the takeaway I'm hearing you say is, hey, look, like we could do better. And in fact, we're incentivized to do better because it creates these amazing things that we can then capitalize on.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
That's it, man. That's awesome.
I mean, and I love hearing what you said about, your grandkids and their grandkids and on and on and on. If we do not innovate and we do not think about the economy in terms of creating processes and ecosystems that make it easier for them to live, easier for them to move through their day, we're not doing our part. It goes way beyond issues like pollution and others. We have health issues, we have homelessness as a major issue, gun violence. There are some major macro issues. And by the way, these aren't bullshit political talk tracks. Like, if there is more gun violence and there's more gun violence in schools, our kids will not have a good education.
Sure.
That impacts future generations. Like, cut the bullshit around, the Constitution and everything else that goes and gets wrapped up into gun violence. All I'm saying is, why doesn't someone actually step up and create some innovation around guns that prevents a certain gun, from being used on a campus? I'm confident there is someone right now who knows how to build that technology. That would be a wildly successful technology to put on every weapon that is not owned by a police officer, as an example.
Yeah. And I think that this goes back to the point of the book, which is people need to have the courage to like step up and just make those changes. Because what I find all too often is people, and this is as a CEO and entrepreneur, I have a golden rule in my organizations. I don't want to hear you bitch about anything unless you're going to tell me a solution. Right?
Totally.
Guess what? Anyone can tell me what sucks. So what people will say is, when it comes to gun violence, well, we can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. I'm like, shut the fuck up. I don't care. Like, tell me, give me solutions. Don't give me problems. I know why we have problems. And I don't know, you follow Sam Harris at all? Do you know him?
Yes.
Yeah. So Sam Harris has some pretty, some would think, conservative thoughts on gun control.
Right.
And I actually think I was actually on the other side of the fence where I'm like, let's go become Japan. Like, they don't have any gun problems because you can't own a gun.
Right.
And then when you start looking at the numbers, you're like, well, or let's go be Australia, let's say. And it's like, well, they bought all those guns back. It would cost us, I think it was like $200 billion to buy the guns. I'm like, you show me a politician that's going to say, let's go spend $200 billion. Oh, and then you got to go get the guns from people. Good luck on that one, dude. So I actually turned the other way. I said, no, that's not going to fix it. Like, you're not going to fix it by abolishing guns. It's just not going to happen.
No, that's right.
There's more guns than people in this country.
That's
but
right.
To your point, maybe there's a capitalistic way to fix it, which is like, no, have as many guns as you want. Your bullets just happen to go into the magnet above the school.
That's right.
When
the trigger doesn't work when you're on campus. Sorry.
Yeah, if you're in like a trigger-free zone, it just doesn't move. The triggers jam up. So how to tell you, and that's probably something you could do, right? But people want to complain. And so my question for you, in my book, I talk about this because, like I said, you got to make things easy if you want change to happen. I think that is actually one of the ways innovation happens, is that we figure out the way to make it easy so that there's mass adoption, right? And so in my book, we talk about, BJ Fogg is a psychologist out of Stanford, and he says, how do you create habits? And habits happen through, if you want to floss your teeth, don't floss the whole mouth, floss one tooth a day. And after a while, you just floss the whole damn thing. You want to eat healthier, put an apple at the end of your desk. Yeah. After a while, you're just going to eat the damn thing. It's there, right? But you don't have to start by eating it. Just put it at the end of your desk. Get in the habit of grabbing an apple, put it at the end of your desk. So when you think of your book and your encouragement around innovative thinking and untethering ourselves from these beliefs that we can't make change, what's one simple piece of advice that your book gives, or that you give to people to make some small change, but that's impactful?
Yeah, it's funny. One of the jokes I make in the book is, if you're so tethered to life that you only wear a certain color pants and a certain color socks, start by changing the color of your socks, right? And it's kind of the same point, which is take that first step. I think what the bottom line is for people in general is, you got to figure out what you're passionate about, and you have to figure out what you want to solve for. And I think when you look at the macro impact you can make, you first have to figure out what you want to do and what you want to be a part of, and then start taking steps towards that. I mean, look, the bottom line is, not one of us will feel like we make enough money. There is no job in this world where you will feel like you make enough money. So it's not going to be about money. And it's not going to be about a boss who tells you what you do is the best thing they've ever seen. It is going to come down to, do you believe in it? Do you believe in what you're doing? And so, yes, you need to start doing things that are different. You need to wear different color socks if you're stuck in that rut. But the bottom line is you got to first figure out what it is you want to do and then start taking little steps towards it. If you want to go and you want to own a company, you may not be able to quit your job and do that. But if there's a certain type of company that you want to start, there are things that you can start doing, taking little baby steps, either meeting with people, writing about it, going out and trying to solve for it. There's so much we can do, and we have so much more time than we think we have. And we all have permission to do it. And it's literally, it's about taking that step. Look at your show now. Your show's phenomenal. I think more people should be listening to your show and watching what you do, because I think it's phenomenal, right? The bottom line is you didn't get here by sitting in a room having to convince yourself. You said, I'm going to do it. And not only am I going to do it, but I'm going to figure out how to find people who share my values. And I'm going to talk to them. And then I'm going to build it from there. And that's what we all have to do. Who knows what you're going to be doing in 5 years, right? We don't know, but you took a step. And you took a step towards doing what you want to do, which is getting to know really interesting people and talking about real things that matter.
Right. I love that, man. That's such great advice. And so, I always like to ask people this question is, what you just said, and what I just heard was people, look, I think people happiness or job satisfaction the number 6 on the list is pay, right? Like once they're making a fair wage, usually that box gets checked, right? And purpose and values become way more important when we're really going to hit that level of self-actualization. So when you talk about making change, or you think about like taking that thing that you want to do, how do you think values participate in those types of decisions? How do you actually frame that in your mind?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think for me, I try to live my life being very open-minded, but really thinking through, how do I embrace diversity of thought? How do I embrace the concept of thinking beyond what's in front of us, and really taking somewhat of an inclusive approach, right? I really try to take those values that our ancestors had. And I think that's what really kind of hit me, right? Is these decisions were made at a time, and we're not talking 1,000 years ago. We're talking 50 years ago, right? These decisions were made, and they were so radically different than today. And so I try to live my own life with this idea that was built on embracing diversity. That was built on this idea of community, embracing people to help them figure out their way. Again, thinking holistically about the concept of community. Our kids face different challenges because they're not hit with that same challenge that our previous ancestors were. So then I think about, how do you translate that? And how do you train them to understand the sacrifices that were made? You look at the way we live, and I recently moved from one state to another. Not too hard, right? But when you leave a country and you have to leave everything behind and start new, that ecosystem that supports that's important, right? So how do we, when we don't know that, when we didn't feel it, how do we translate that to others? I personally have done things like helped create programs for people who were less fortunate in my undergrad school. And my wife and I did that because we felt that it was important to try to pay it forward and use it as a way to teach our kids about how to support people from different backgrounds and how to use what we have for good, right? There's a lot of different ways to do it, but I think you've got to acknowledge that we have different challenges today because we're not living in that same challenging time. And therefore we have to understand it, appreciate it, and make sure that we're still allowing those values to live. We cannot go in the opposite direction. We cannot go in a direction of saying we're living in a bubble. It's only what happens in our neighborhood. I'm content if my family is fine. If I've got my college kids' tuition paid for, and I've got a down payment for their house, the world is fine because it's only about my kids. That is false. And there will be a rude awakening if you raise your kids to think it's only about them and that they're going to be fine when everybody else is not fine. And so we really, this is a big challenge, man. And the work that you do around values and the things that you talk about, it needs to be front and center. We are at a pivot point as we think about where we're going culturally.
Yeah, I think that, and I was saying this to somebody on one of the shows this week. I said, I think 20, 30 years ago, I mean, we're probably right around the same age. And I said, like, I was a kid that grew up in the early 80s, mid 80s. And I'm in my 40s now. And so I grew up at a time where there was no internet. We weren't digitally connected. Like, kids went out and played. We got to know our neighbors. You just, like, because there was nothing else to do, that's what you did. And families were forced to connect more. And there was a forced community because we couldn't be in our own little islands inside of our homes like we can today, Netflixing it out or on our, Nintendo Wii's or whatever. And so I think that because of what's happened is that there was this natural rubbing of shoulders that people had shared values because they were forced to interact in that way. And I think what's happened is that's been fragmented, and people are realizing that now. You're seeing increased suicides, you're seeing healthcare issues, you're seeing all these issues all associated with people disconnecting, right? Yeah. And I think that our government has done the same thing, fragmented, no bipartisanship. Like, we're in a place where everyone's fragmented. And I think that it's going back to the basics, which is we need to connect as humans back to our basics, back to our values. And my belief is actually that entrepreneurship is the way to get there. And when they're there, to your point, well, then we can push the idea of making a difference in our own unique ways, which it sounds like your book really promotes. So I love that, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, dude, congrats, dude. Like most people don't know this, but putting a book out in the world is a fucking pain in the ass. It's a lot of work.
It's hard.
But it's amazing. And so any final thoughts, man, on the book, on what you want people to know about it and what's going on with you?
No, look, I would just say, I hope that anyone who wants to read the book checks it out, Elephant's Dilemma, but more importantly, really listen to conversations like this. And the one takeaway is that every single person listening to this can make an impact. You can do it. And all you need to do is believe that you can do it. You believe that you have permission, and know that you can set your mind to whatever you want to achieve and go out and do it. And you can change the world, and you can make the world so much better by simply taking that first step. And so I would just remind everyone that, it's the little things like reading the book. It's the little things like listening to you. It's that little step that inspires you. And when you feel that spark, go do it. Don't let it fail. Don't let it go away. Don't say, I'll get to it next year. Do it. Take that one step. As you said, eat that apple that's sitting on the desk, right? Just take that step and do it.
Yeah, I love it, man. So look, where can everybody find you? Where can they get the book? Just let's give them all.
So the funniest place to find me is on LinkedIn. My co-founder and I go back and forth at each other all day long. We've got a great following on LinkedIn. Just look me up, Jon Bostock. That is the most fun place to see me in action. But the book is on Amazon, The Elephant's Dilemma. Check it out. And frankly, connect with me on LinkedIn and tell me what you think. I absolutely love getting real feedback, real life feedback on the thoughts and how it's inspired people.
All right, dude, brother, I appreciate your book.
Man. Thank you.
Having you on the show. Guys, stay tuned. We have another one last show for today coming up here at the top of the hour with Peter, and I'm blanking, Kozadoy, and his new book. But dude, Jon, such a pleasure having you on the show. I'm really grateful to have you and for your book to be out in the world, and I'm excited to take a look at it. And guys, check him out on LinkedIn. I know I'm going to. And for myself, follow us on The Real Darius M on Facebook and or go to my website at therealdarius.com, and you can follow us on all of our social there. But with that said, guys, have a great Friday. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.